White smoke pours from the Sistine Chapel's chimney, letting the world know the Roman Catholic Church has a new pope. I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, the election of Pope Francis and reaction from local Catholics.
And I'm Peggy Pico. Also ahead, a diverse group of San Diego leaders join forces to support immigration reform. Then a former neo-Nazi recruiter speaks at a San Diego Jewish Community Center about their unusual art exhibit opening tonight.
Some city council members go to bat for Padres fans who say they can't watch their team on TV. We'll have a look at the dispute. And we'll explain how the lives of butterflies are inextricably tied to our own as we take you to the Safari Park's butterfly jungle. KPBS Evening Edition starts now.
KPBS Evening Edition is made possible by Joan and Erwin Jacobs and by
Thousands cheer in St. Peter's Square welcoming the new Pope Francis, the first pope from Latin America. Good evening. There are many firsts in the election of Pope Francis. The question now, where will he take the Catholic Church? Our coverage begins with Lee Powell of the Associated Press.
With white smoke billowing, bells ringing, and joyous crowds, word of a new pope from a balcony over St. Peter's Square in Vatican City.
Habemus Papam.
Then Argentine Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio appears, elected pope, the first pontiff from the Americas, and the first from outside Europe in more than a millennia. He will take the name Pope Francis. Bergoglio is regarded as an intellectual, modernizing what had been one of the most conservative Roman Catholic churches in Latin America. He is the first Jesuit pope, spending nearly his entire career at home in Argentina, overseeing many churches and priests. Sergio Rubin, author of his biography, says in just 6 years he went from being a priest in a small convent in a province to being Archbishop of Buenos Aires and future Cardinal Primate of Argentina. His career has been meteoric. The 76-year-old reportedly received the second highest number of votes in the 2005 papal election, after Joseph Ratzinger, who became Pope Benedict XVI but resigned last month. He has long specialized in the kind of pastoral work some say is the most essential skill for the next pope. Bergoglio was initially trained as a chemist, teaching literature and philosophy, among other subjects, before becoming Buenos Aires Archbishop in 1998. He has slowed a bit with age, feeling the effects of having a lung removed because of infection while a teenager. As Argentina's top church official, he never lived in an ornate church mansion, preferring a simple bed in a downtown room heated by a small stove. For years, he took public transportation around the city and cooked his own meals. Lee Powell, The Associated Press.
I'm Eric Anderson. Bishop Robert Brum welcomed the news of a new pope. He asked the county's 980,000 Catholics to embrace Pope Francis with love. Brum says it is a difficult job, and he's hopeful the 76-year-old will have what it takes to lead the church.
Well, he's a little bit older than I am, and he looked to have more energy at the moment, but perhaps that's because of the adrenaline rush. I would hope and pray that at least for a number of years, he would have the energy it takes to do what needs to be done.
Brum and Pope Francis both share a Jesuit background, and he says that should help the pontiff on his mission of social outreach. Brum also hopes for a unifying leader.
Charisma is not everything, but it's a lot.
The church Pope Francis now leads is still reeling from the fallout of numerous sexual abuse scandals. The local diocese paid out millions to settle claims of abuse. And Father Bill Headley says the church faces other challenges.
We struggle with certain biological issues like abortion, homosexuality, other things like this. We also struggle with the question of women and their place in ministry. And yet it's a church that's growing. Some people don't realize how phenomenal that is, particularly in the southern part of the world.
Imperial County resident Roy Scabosa took in a midday mass at St. Joseph's Cathedral in downtown San Diego. He was surprised to hear the new pope was from Argentina.
Well, the church is going through a real hard problem right now throughout the world. Many places, the Catholic Church has been going down, but it'll remain. It'll be up there. And they need somebody to really, I guess, push on.
Another man who came to church for Mass was excited about the possibilities and welcomed the fresh perspective from the first non-European pope in a millennium. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
And PBS NewsHour will have more on the election of Pope Francis coming up at 7. For the first time this year, an infant has died of the flu in San Diego. County Health Agency says there have been 51 deaths this flu season, the second worst on record. A judge has delayed a final decision on a financing plan to expand the downtown convention center. Now, earlier this week, he tentatively ruled in favor of adding a fee to hotel room rates to help pay for the expansion. Critics call it an illegal tax because only hoteliers voted. Today, the judge heard arguments on both sides and took them under consideration. The city will pay for an outside attorney to defend Mayor Bob Filner in a lawsuit over hotel fees used to market San Diego. Now, Filner refused to release the money to the Tourism Marketing District, and he doesn't want to be represented by City Attorney Jan Goldsmith. The two have had a rocky relationship so far. And San Diego Unified's new school superintendent will get more money than her predecessor. Trustees approved a salary of $255,000 a year for Cindy Martin. That's $5,000 more than current superintendent Bill Koba. Martin plans to use the $5,000 for a scholarship for a student planning to go into education. Business, labor, and San Diego civic leaders launched a campaign to support immigration reform. Peggy Pico finds out what they want and how they plan to get it.
While the federal government works to come up with a reform plan for the nation's 11 million undocumented immigrants, a newly formed local group called San Diegans United for Common Sense Immigration Reform have their own plans. Here to talk more about it are my guest, former Assemblyman and chair of the new group, Nathan Fletcher, and Norma Chavez Peterson, Associate Director of San Diego's ACLU. Thank you both for being here. Nathan, let's start with you. Who were some of the key players here in the group that were at this press conference earlier today?
We had this amazing and broad coalition. It included people from the leaders from the business community, people like Paul and Erwin Jacobs, also those representing organizations, Dwayne Roth from Connect and Joe Panetta from Biocom and other CEOs. We had law enforcement leaders. Sheriff Bill Gore was the head of our law enforcement coalition, but also signing on were Chief Lansdowne, District Attorney Bonnie Dumanis, Chief David Bejarano, and others. We had labor leaders. The CEO of the San Diego and Imperial County Labor Council, Lorena Gonzalez, was there, along with a number of her individual leaders from her labor unions. We had civil liberties groups were there, Norma and the ACLU, and then faith groups. We had pastors and bishops and rabbis, leaders from across denominations and across spectrums that all came together.
So a very diverse group with very different interests. Right. What about this decisive issue is uniting them and making them a part of this group?
Well, I think every member of this coalition cares about immigration for different reasons. Everyone wants it solved in its entirety. But for example, for Qualcomm, it's a question of growing the San Diego economy and having a visa system that allows us to get the skilled workers in to fill the jobs that are needed. The sheriff talked about the need for public safety and people to feel safe. You can't have people that are afraid to report crimes or afraid if they've been a victim. Labor talked about the importance we need to not have an underclass, to make sure that all workers have basic protections. They're treated with dignity and respect. Of course, civil liberties groups are focused on those basic human rights are embedded in the Constitution, and then faith groups talked about it from their perspective. And so all of us came together and said it has to be solved, and if we all across the spectrum can agree to a core set of principles, very specific, then our leaders in Washington should be as well.
And I want to come back to those principles, but first I do want to ask Norma, do you see that this immigration reform here in San Diego, what would you like to see come out of it?
Well, I think what I want to see come out of our effort is that, number one, the work has to happen in Washington, D.C. But I think here locally, with this historic moment with these diverse stakeholders coming together, is we want this to unite the San Diego community around these shared principles. And we want to make sure that our representatives to Congress take that message back to D.C. and get to work on really addressing this complex issue. But if we can figure it out, if we can come to some common ground, they've got to find some.
Right, and I love the common sense part in the title there. Norma, do you think that an overhaul in Washington, D.C. in the immigration reform is likely, and do you think that will impact us here in San Diego?
I think the stars are aligned. And I mean, look, we've identified a pope today. So I'm hopeful that our country can move forward. I think this is an issue that's been long overdue to be addressed. And there's a lot of conversations, a lot of movement in Washington, D.C. There's a Senate plan, there's a House plan, there's a White House plan. Something has to happen this year, and I believe it can happen.
And Nathan, you guys are trying to help that happen in this group. You were talking about the 4 principles. What are the 4 principles?
So the 4 principles that we came to agreement on, and they're at sdcommonsense.org, but the first is a pathway to citizenship. We've got to bring the 11 million Americans out of the shadows and create a system. The second one is a reform of the visa and immigration system to allow for high-skilled and lesser-skilled workers to match in a market-based system the needs of the economy, while also ensuring that we have protections for workers so that their wages and their hours and their working conditions are protected and they're not exploited. The third focuses on ensuring that we have smart border security, making sure that that border is open for commerce and for cultural exchange, and making sure that communities feel safe. And then the fourth is really ensuring that everything that happens really encapsulates and includes those basic human rights, those civil liberties that are a part of the Bill of Rights in the U.S. Constitution. And, you know, we joked today that you probably couldn't get our coalition to agree on much. We might agree on what day of the week it is, but it would take us a little while. But we all came together and we agreed. We stepped out of our comfort zone and we agreed on these core principles. And that's what gives me hope. I believe it can be done this year. Well,
we are out of time, but I want to follow up later on the core principles and how that actually trickles down to some action going on and getting these immigration bills passed.
That'd be great. Happy to come back.
All right, Nathan Fletcher and Norma Chavez-Peterson, thank you so much for talking with us.
Thank you for having us.
Democratic Assemblyman Ben Hueso is switching chambers at the state capitol. He won yesterday's special election in the 40th Senate District covering southern and eastern San Diego. Hueso takes the seat left vacant when Juan Vargas was elected to Congress. New ownership has San Diego Padres fans excited about baseball season, but some are worked up for another reason: no cable TV coverage. KPBS Metro reporter Katie Orr says City Council is trying to resolve a programming dispute stretching into a second season.
Ed Mrachek is a die-hard Padres fan. He has been since the 70s, growing up in the college area. And he has the old team hats to prove it.
This is early 70s, probably like circa 73, the Padre Brown. My dad ended up painting our house Padre Brown.
Ed has been through it all as a fan, watching great players, suffering through losing seasons, reveling in the team's World Series appearances.
Tony Gwynn goes deep with his first postseason home run.
And sometimes Ed wants to keep track of his team while he's at his home in La Jolla.
But Ed can't watch the game at home. He either has to go to a bar or buy a ticket, because Ed is a Time Warner cable customer.
Well, I think it's corporate politics at its best. I mean, I've had Time Warner for over 20 years in La Jolla, and it's been really frustrating not having the Padres on the air.
The Padres games aren't available to Time Warner cable viewers who are concentrated toward North County. The company hasn't been able to come to an agreement with Fox Sports San Diego, the network contracted to air the games. Time Warner Cable maintains Fox wants too much money for the sports network. Fox points out it's reached broadcast agreements with every other major provider in the area, and that Time Warner Cable is spending $8 billion to broadcast sports in Los Angeles. That has Sherry Leitner concerned, too. The San Diego City Council member is holding a public hearing to try to work through the dispute, though she has no real power to resolve it. If nothing else, she says her hearing can put a little pressure on the companies.
The city can certainly make folks aware of what some of their other options are, and to actually ask Time Warner and Fox to get together for the benefit of the constituents in the city.
Constituents like UT San Diego columnist and Time Warner cable subscriber Matt Hall.
But come on, man. I mean, people just want to watch the baseball on TV. It's America's pastime.
Hall started writing about the dispute last season when he couldn't watch the Padres on TV. He points out a lot of the affected fans are older or disabled and can't make it downtown to Petco Park for a game. He says there's no good reason for it.
No, this is greed. I mean, it's plain and simple. This is greed. People are arguing over sums of money that you or I are never going to see in our lifetimes. And I think people are disgusted by that.
But while the public may be disgruntled, Professor George Belch says we should expect more of these situations. He's the chair of the marketing department at San Diego State and co-founder of the university's sports MBA program. He says these kinds of disputes are becoming more common as the amount of money involved increases. But he says the city's role is unclear because this is ultimately a conflict between two private companies.
For me, at least, it's hard to see where the city would come in. I mean, the city would like to say this is an important issue to the population, but I guess that's for the city attorneys to figure out what legal rights they really have to get involved in this.
The San Diego city attorney has issued a memo saying it's reasonable for San Diego to look into the issue, though it's ultimately up to the companies to settle it. But Belch says the Padre players may have a role as well. If they have a strong start to the season, it may spur more fans to demand the companies reach an agreement so they can watch their beloved Padres from wherever they choose. Katie Orr, KPBS News.
By the way, the public hearing on the Padres TV dispute will be held at City Hall tomorrow morning at 9. An art exhibit opening in San Diego tonight looks at hate in a unique way. Peggy Pico speaks with a former neo-Nazi recruiter who is keynote speaker at the event.
San Diego's Anti-Defamation League is sponsoring an art exhibit called Speaking Volumes, Transforming Hate, with work based on 4,000 propaganda books. Tammy Gillis with the Anti-Defamation League's local chapter, and Frank Meek, former neo-Nazi recruiter and author of the autobiography of a recovering skinhead, are joining me now to talk more about this fascinating art exhibit. And Tammy, let's start with you. The exhibit contains actual pages from these sort of, I guess, propaganda books, to not say, you know, how did you come across this material?
Sure. This material was collected by the Montana Human Rights Network, and there were 4,000 volumes of hate books that were put out by the World Church of the Creator, which is an extremist group. And they came across these books and they decided they were going to turn them from the hateful message into something that people could talk about and transforming that hate.
Try to transform it. Let's take a few examples from the exhibit. The first one that we're looking at here, I think coming up on the screen, tell us about what this piece is.
So this is one of a set of about 6 little niches that the artist took the pages from those awful books, and she created the niche, and then inside she's put some photographs, and those photographs are actually of her relatives that perished in the Holocaust. So it talks about what happens when hate reaches its highest level, which is genocide.
And okay, for an example on that, we have another picture of a mousetrap, an exhibit piece here. And Mark, this has some significance when it comes to hate groups.
Well, the mousetrap, there's actually one of the leading hate websites is a mousetrap website. It's what the name of the thing. I don't want to give them any plug, but and also I love that piece because it's like a bait and switch. It's like, grab this book because it can make you feel better, but it's a trap. It's the bait and switch. See, I remember when I first got in, they would say, "Oh, it's all about being proud of the white race and pride of this." You give it 2 minutes in talking to any conversation with a person that's a member of a hate group, that pride turns real quick into, look at them. Look at what they're doing. And it's not about they're proud of their heritage anymore. It's always about what everyone else is doing that they don't like.
That is so horrible. Let's talk about your experience. You became a white supremacist at just age 13, I understand. And now you call yourself a recovering skinhead, and you're an advocate for diversity tolerance. Tell us what happened in the fact of what changed you. How'd you turn around?
It was a higher power of some sort. I don't know what's up there, but I know it was in my life. Human nature and science consistently kept proving me wrong at the times when I was questioning things. When I was getting out of the movement, it was the same time as the O.J. Simpson trial. So I was reading about this DNA thing, because I really never knew much about it, which started to go right against everything I just learned, that scientifically we're all different, and that God made us all different.
And so you had a personal experience as well, that you once you got out of prison, right, you had difficulty finding a job. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, difficult. I had a swastika tattooed on my side of my neck, so definitely not good people skills right there. And a friend of mine got me a job doing antique furniture in Philadelphia, and the guy that owned the company happened to be a Jewish guy. He wasn't yarmulke Jewish, he was religiously Jewish, he was just the kind of the oy vey type of guy. He's just super funny, and he hired me on, and he was just one of the guys in my life that just became a mentor. Always said good things about me, even when I was down on myself. And I just remember I always kind of looked up to him, even after working at the company for a while. After working at the company, I really started to look up to him, found out how he started the business. And here he's telling me that I remind him of him, and that how street smart I am, and how I have, you know, great head on my shoulders. And I just remember, you know, not wanting to be my dad, but I was just grateful to have this other human being in my life.
Completely opposite of what you learned early. Tammy, some may argue that this art exhibit could glorify this offensive material. What is your answer to that?
I don't think that it does. I think the purpose of it is to educate, to make people think, to realize that hate is still out there, and what can we do, even as a community here in San Diego, to fight against that hate.
All right, we are out of time, but I do want to let viewers know that we're looking at some of the pieces up there, that the art exhibit Speaking Volumes, Transforming Hate opens tonight at the Lawrence Family Jewish Community Center and runs through June 6. Frank and Tammy, thank you both so much for talking with me today.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm Jeffrey Brown. On the next News Hour, questions about government regulations aimed at protecting us from chemically contaminated drinking water. That's Wednesday on the PBS News Hour.
Conservationists trying to save the monarch butterfly are being urged to redouble their efforts to avoid losing one of nature's most remarkable spectacles. For a better understanding of the situation, San Diego will be home to one of the largest butterfly exhibits on the West Coast, but only for a few weeks.
So, this butterfly is called the black and white butterfly.
Yes, you can identify them by their color or names, like the zebra longwing, orange-beared tiger, or blue morpho, one of my favorites. San Diego Safari Park has been putting on its butterfly jungle exhibit for about 20 years now. It happens every springtime for 3 weeks. And is more than just a bunch of fancy fluttering.
And it's an opportunity then, too, to help engage people with what's going on in the environment, because honestly, butterflies and other bugs and insects are a great indicator as to what challenges might be going on in certain ecosystems.
Butterflies are sort of like bees. They help pollinate trees, plants, and a lot of the food products for people that come from farms. And just like the bees, their populations have been dwindling.
The slightest temperature variance can actually affect their eggs and their pupa and their ability to develop properly.
There are 30 species of butterflies from all over the world here, and be prepared because one may land on you.
Or in this case,
3.
All these butterflies were hatched in San Diego, but hail from 4 different continents. Several thousand cocoons were shipped here from as far away as Africa, Asia, and North, Central, and South America. And they're kept in what feels like a tropical forest, but it's really just a temperature-controlled room warmed to 86 degrees.
If it's not kept at that proper temperature, these animals will not emerge properly from their cocoons or their pupa.
Safari Park has developed a conservation program to promote butterfly farming as a sustainable occupation. These cocoons hatch within a few days or weeks.
They can continually raise these animals as well as the host plants within the realms of this farm without exploiting the tropical rainforest around them, which we all know, of course, is endangered as well.
The lifespan of a butterfly can range from a few days to several weeks, and this exhibit will be on display for all to see through April 7th at the San Diego Safari Park.
And you can see and find more information about the Butterfly Jungle exhibit on their website at sdsafaripark.org. On Friday, the Alzheimer's Association of San Diego holds its Memories in the Making art auction. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando looks at how art created by patients is helping to raise awareness and money.
The Alzheimer's Association of San Diego is a nonprofit organization that supports people suffering from Alzheimer's disease.
The Memories in the Making art program has been going on for 20+ years. We've run the program in over 30 different locations here in San Diego County. It's a therapeutic art program that allows people living with Alzheimer's disease to express themselves.
In this room, the residents come in once a week and we work and stimulate their memories, different memories of life, and translate that into a visual experience.
If you look through the artwork that they do, you would see so many powerful statements about, I think, their condition. To me, it's a way of expressing that for Alzheimer's patients.
Community artist Natalie Sabin-Gore was asked to do a pairing for the upcoming auction. This means selecting a painting created by an Alzheimer's patient and creating a new work of art to pair with it.
We've got 10 pairings, and then we've got close to 100 other pieces of artwork that'll be auctioned off. So it's just a tremendous event, both to educate the community about Alzheimer's disease and its terrible impacts, and then also raise support for the association and the programs that we run.
In San Diego today, there are more than 60,000 people living with Alzheimer's disease. The Memories in the Making art auction takes place this Friday at the University of San Diego. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And you can find tonight's stories and download the KPBS app all on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great night.